Well, I think all of you remember last year during the election campaign, Michiganders approved a proposal that would hopefully outlaw partisan gerrymandering of various voting districts in our state. The proposal passed easily on the ballot, and it instructed our Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson to put together a 13-member panel made up of Republicans, Democrats, and Independents to redraw all of the districts here in our state. Now that's being challenged in court, and that comes on the heels of a Supreme Court decision just a week or so ago, which said that federal courts cannot enter into the fray and rule that gerrymandering should not be done based on political considerations, because they are political considerations. What does it all mean? Well, we got another lawsuit against the proposal here in Michigan trying to stop the constitutionality or to question the constitutionality of Proposal 2. Tony Daunt is the executive director of the Michigan Freedom Fund, a nonprofit, and his name is at the top of the lawsuit. He's the man filing it on behalf of all residents here in the state of Michigan. And Tony's on the other end of our line. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Frank. Thanks for having me.
First of all, the Supreme Court's ruling last week really doesn't apply to this lawsuit, right?
No, this lawsuit that we have filed is fundamentally different from what was being dealt with in the previous term here. This one is challenging the constitutionality of the commission itself because of the restrictions that are put in it on who can apply to serve and who can serve, particularly First Amendment violations and 14th Amendment violations. Basically, what this commission does and what these restrictions do is punish people for their civic involvement, for their involvement in the political process, makes them ineligible to serve, and even more egregiously is the fact that it restricts people who are related to these individuals.
Right.
And so we believe that's a fundamental constitutional violation and want the courts to get in and rule.
Yeah, originally we were told that this was going to solve all of those problems that you just mentioned that are restricted under this law, because the Secretary of State was going to have the free reign, basically, to name the 13 members of this commission. But it's going to be 4 Republicans, 4 Democrats, and 5 members with no or other political party affiliations. But here's the issue that is being raised by Tony in his lawsuit. It is simply this, that the new commission will not include anybody. In fact, it bars individuals and family members of individuals who are or have been in the last 6 years an elected or political party official, a candidate for office, a political consultant or lobbyist or someone who works for one, a legislative or unclassified state employee. Well, that covers a lot of ground.
It covers a tremendous amount of ground. It's a lot of people that are having their constitutional rights violated by this commission. And, the work that we've done, the math that we've done shows this to be at least 500,000 people who would otherwise be eligible to serve on this commission. And again, it's not just the easy targets of a lobbyist or a current sitting member of the legislature. It's people who are precinct delegates. It's people who simply serve on their local county party's executive committee. But not just them, their parents, their children, their spouse, their stepchildren, or their step-parents. And so you've got people who may have completely different political beliefs prohibited based on what their family member does. And I think that's a fundamental violation of their First Amendment and 14th Amendment rights.
I wonder whether if Michiganders had known this, they would have approved of it last November.
Well, I'm not seeking to relitigate the debate over the ability or the right of having this, the wiseness of having this in our Constitution. But it is definitely an important thing that even to this day, when we talk about this, people aren't aware of it. They aren't aware of the fact that because they're a precinct delegate, they're prohibited from serving, but also so is their spouse, so is their child. And just because something is popular, it does not make it right. And that's what we're seeking to address here is whether or not, as we believe, these constitutional protections are being violated.
So, Tony, if you win your lawsuit in the Western District of the state of Michigan in the federal court, the commission would not be allowed to be formed. What exactly would happen here? We'd keep the same districts that we have now?
Unless something were to change, if we were successful, and the remedy we're seeking is to have the commission thrown out as a whole, because we believe this portion of it, these restrictions make it basically ineligible, and you make it unable to create it as it's written. We would go back to the way things are now, unless, of course, there was some other ballot initiative or the legislature was to come up with a different way of drawing the lines.
Mm-hmm. And these rules that you're talking about that we've been discussing that bar certain people from serving on this commission based on what their relatives have done in terms of political activity, this was in the law itself that we voted for, right?
Yes, this is in the language of the constitutional amendment.
Yeah, it's not that this is something that Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson suddenly came up with.
This was in the language as written. The only thing that could be claimed that the Secretary of State's interpretation added to the restrictions would be related to precinct delegates, but quite frankly, I had believed all along, based on the wording of the initiative, that precinct delegates were excluded. And again, whether this excludes people, it's one person or 5 million people who are excluded because of their participation in the political process, exercising their First Amendment rights. It doesn't make it right. And we think the courts, I'm confident that the courts, when they look into this, will view it the same way, will deem it's a constitutional violation, a fundamental violation, and overturn this.
All right, Tony Daunt, appreciate the time. Thanks so very much. Good luck there at Michigan Freedom Fund, and I'm sure we'll be talking again about this lawsuit. It's going to make big news.
You bet. Thank you, Frank. Have a great day.
Take care.